Glen Canyon Dam is 38 feet from shutting down its turbines forever. America's second largest reservoir has hit 25% capacity. And what the federal government did about it last week is the kind of decision that doesn't get made unless the alternative is worse. They chose to let one dam decline to save the other. They said so in the press release. This is not a warning anymore. This is the scenario playing out right now, in real time. The Bureau of Reclamation announced an emergency plan to protect Glen Canyon Dam, and in the same document acknowledged it will reduce Hoover Dam's power output by 40% by this fall. Imagine you're standing at the base of Glen Canyon Dam, looking at 4 steel pipes, each one 8 feet across. Those pipes were built as a last resort for when the reservoir flooded over. They haven't been the primary release system in this dam's history. They're damaged from the last time they were seriously used, and right now, they're the only thing that keeps 25 million people's water moving if the lake drops another 38 feet. Lake Powell at full capacity holds 25 million acre-feet of water, enough to put the entire state of Arizona under 10 feet. Right now, 3/4 of that is gone. The water has fallen so far that calcium carbonate rings, white scars carved into the canyon walls, mark where the surface used to be. And the line that matters most isn't the one showing where the water was. It's the one 38 feet below where it is now. At the end of March, Lake Powell's water surface sat at 3,527 feet. The minimum power pool, the line where the turbines have to shut down, is 3,490 feet. That gap, less than 38 feet of water, is what the entire emergency plan exists to protect. The Bureau of Reclamation's April 24-month study projects the reservoir hits that line by August without intervention. The Upper Colorado River Commission puts it even earlier, on June. The inflow forecast for this water year came in at 3.87 million acre-feet, 40% of average. The worst case scenario on the table is 2.78 million acre-feet, which is 29% of historical average and one of the lowest figures on record since the dam was built. Snowpack across the Colorado River Basin this winter was the lowest ever recorded. Lake Powell and Lake Mead combined, the 2 largest reservoirs in the country, are sitting at 36% of total capacity. Glen Canyon Dam generates 1,320 megawatts at full pool, powering roughly 5 million people across 7 states. Below 3,490 feet, the turbines shut down, and all releases must pass through the river outlet works, the 4 8-foot backup pipes, whose combined maximum capacity is 15,000 cubic feet per second. The Colorado River Compact requires the upper basin to deliver roughly 7.5 million acre-feet per year to the lower basin. That obligation does not pause when the reservoir is low. At 15,000 cubic feet per second through 4 backup pipes, the math on meeting it starts to break down. Therefore, the question the April 24-month study opens is not what happens when Glen Canyon Dam stops making power. It is what happens when the Bureau has to choose between protecting the dam's physical infrastructure and meeting its legal downstream delivery commitments. On April 17th, that choice was made. On March 26, 2024, more than a year before the April 2026 announcement, Bureau of Reclamation engineers produced a technical decision memo assessing what happens when Lake Powell drops below 3,490 feet. It contains this sentence. In summary, at reservoir levels below the minimum power pool elevation of 3,490 feet, there are concerns with relying on the river outlet works as the sole means of sustained water releases from Glen Canyon Dam. In April 2023, the Bureau used the river outlet works for a high-flow experiment, 72 hours of sustained discharge at 3,500 cubic feet per second into the Grand Canyon. Afterward, engineers inspected the pipes and found cavitation damage, pitting, erosion, and coating failure caused by shock waves from imploding air bubbles. The damage had been occurring since at least 1965. Nick Williams, Upper Colorado River Power Manager for the Bureau of Reclamation, confirmed publicly that cavitation damage is more likely when reservoir levels are low, the precise condition under which the river outlet works would be used exclusively. The Bureau budgeted $9 million in epoxy repairs. Eric Balkin, executive director of the Glen Canyon Institute, said after the damage was disclosed, "This is a really big infrastructure problem, and it has a big impact on how water is managed throughout this whole basin. Therefore, the April 17th emergency plan is protecting those 4 pipes from having to carry 25 million people's water supply by reducing their releases that would otherwise drain Lake Powell to where the pipes take over. It works if the reservoir stays above 3,490 feet. The target, 3,500 feet by April 2027. A 10-foot buffer over 12 months on the river with the lowest inflow on record. The plan is releasing 660,000 acre-feet to 1 million acre-feet from Flaming Gorge Reservoir on the Wyoming-Utah border, flowing down the Green River into Lake Powell. Flaming Gorge currently holds 3.1 million acre-feet, and Powell releases cut from 7.48 million acre-feet to 6.0 million acre-feet through September. Together, the Bureau projects those 2 moves add roughly 54 feet of elevation to Lake Powell by April 2027. Gene Shawcroft, chair of the Colorado River Authority of Utah, said before the plan was finalized, if you assume that water is available, then instead of just having Lake Powell and Lake Mead low, you end up in a situation where Flaming Gorge, Blue Mesa, and Navajo are low, and you haven't solved the problem. Below the river outlet works, at 3,370 feet, is dead pool, where water cannot pass through the dam at all. The river downstream stops. The legal obligations to the lower basin cannot be met. And the question the plan does not answer is what happens if the minimum probable inflow arrives and the 10-foot buffer disappears before April 2027. The only time Glen Canyon Dam's infrastructure was pushed past its design limits, engineers found a hole in the bedrock large enough to park a fleet of vehicles inside. On June 6, 1983, Lake Powell was 96% full and still rising after the wettest winter in years. Dam operators opened the left spillway for the first time since 1980, less than a tenth of its rated capacity, just to bleed off some of the pressure. Within days, the entire dam began to shake. Engineers lowered themselves into the tunnel on an inspection cart and found a hole 32 feet deep, 40 feet wide, and 150 feet long carved through the concrete lining and into the Navajo sandstone underneath. Navajo sandstone is compacted ancient desert. The water was dissolving it. Bureau crews bolted emergency plywood flashboards to the spillway gates to buy more storage capacity while the bedrock kept disappearing. The dam held, but the outcome was plywood on a shaking structure while engineers watched the foundation erode beneath them. When it was over, the repair bill came to $15 million. Air slots went into the spillway tunnels to break up cavitation before it could reach the walls. The river outlet works got no equivalent fix. They didn't need one then. The reservoir was full. Therefore, 1983 and 2026 are mirror images of the same dam under opposite pressure. In 1983, there was too much water, and the high water infrastructure failed. In 2026, there is too little, and the low water infrastructure is the thing federal engineers have on record saying they have concerns about. The question 1983 leaves open, and the April 2026 plan does not close, is what the contingency looks like if the reservoir descends to 3,490 feet anyway. The 2026 operating guidelines expired December 31st. The plan to protect Glen Canyon Dam runs to April 2027. Those 2 dates do not align, and nothing has been agreed to cover the gap. So the Bureau has said it will determine post-2026 operations unilaterally if necessary. Sometime this summer, while Lake Mead is falling faster than projected, Flaming Gorge is partially drawn down, and Lake Powell is being held 10 feet above the line, where 4 damaged pipes become the only path for Colorado River water to reach 25 million people. There is a particular kind of system that 2 linked reservoirs on a single over-allocated river produces, one where every lever available to protect one dam simultaneously degrades the other, and where the backup system is documented as damaged and was never designed for the role it would be asked to play. Reducing releases from Lake Powell was the only way to protect Glen Canyon Dam. Reclamation said so itself. It also said that same decision will reduce Hoover Dam's power output by 40%. The Colorado River has 2 critical dams. The plan to save one is accelerating the decline of the other. There is no version of this that solves both problems at once.